This week, we're continuing our conversation with Judy Carmichael. We'll get to hear how she got started and when she went to New York, and I think you'll all enjoy it, so keep listening. Explain how you got from Disneyland to, playing jazz festivals. I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it was really, it's a huge leap for somebody who didn't have your background in lots of music and wasn't schooled in this. It was a huge thing because I went back to New York. I knew I wanted to go to New York. I was fortunate that the different big bands played at Disneyland. So I was very fortunate that way. Anybody who worked at my era, Basie was still alive, early 80s, Lionel Hampton, Buddy Rich.
Yep.
So I would play my sets and then I'd run up the street at Disneyland and could see the band play every night. So I got to hear those guys, which a lot of the jazz clubs I wouldn't go to because they were dangerous for me to go by myself. And nobody ever wanted to go with me. So, my girlfriends didn't want to go and all of that.
Right.
And then it was weird too, because everybody was hitting on me. So nobody believed that this girl, this 20-something girl on her own was there to hear the music. So that was a great advantage. But all of those guys, the ones that were much older, like Red Callender, like Basie, like Freddie Green, that I got to know, who I actually considered friends, were encouraging me to go to New York. They just kept saying, nobody understands what you're doing here. You've got to go somewhere where they really get it. And because I wasn't a real literate musician, I wasn't going to go into the studios. And basically all of us who worked at Disneyland, you either were going to stay in LA and be a studio player, or you were going to go play festivals. And so I went to New York. I was really lucky. I mean, I was smart about it in a way because I was making a lot of money at Disneyland, and I got back then. I got a 5-week paid vacation, and the other piano, and full 100% dental, 100% medical, if you can imagine such a thing. Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. No. But the other piano player, who was a full-on ragtime piano player named Rod Miller, he was daytime, I was nighttime. And bless Rod, he was an animal. Well, we were both animals. We could play forever. And so what he did, he was very encouraging. He was older than I and was really, Judy's going to get a career, because he was going to only work there. He was another one that was sort of formed by Disneyland. Iowa farm boy that got the gig, formed the gig formed him, 100 miles an hour a day, all the Disney tunes. He said, when I started going to New York just to check it out, he said, well, I'll play your sets. Go ahead and take all of it, take 5 weeks off or take 10 weeks off. And he would do like 2 weeks in a row of 14-hour sets. And they let us do it. And then I did 14 hours so that I get extra weeks or something. No, it's an out-of-body experience to work that, you get a break. But it's 14 hours.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Did the day.
And every day turns into the same day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, it was bizarre. My chops have never been better.
I did a gig at the, just to say, I did a gig at the Callender Hotel 7 days a week for almost a year. And every day is the same day.
Yeah, it is. But, you just so I did, but what I did is I went back, there was a place called Hanratty's, and it was on the Upper East Side. So it was very unusual because everything was midtown or downtown. And this was very elegant because everybody dressed up, because there were it was the 80s. So everybody was an investment banker and brought their, with their wives and come in, or a trader or something. And, but everybody who worked there was a man. Everybody was much, much older than I. And I went in, the turning point in my life, and I was fortunate, but I had the guts to do it. And I thought that in New York, to me, because I tried to sit in at different places in LA, and they never got past the fact that I was a pretty girl in her early 20s. And they wanted to put a flower in my hair and a 30s outfit on me and have me play in a restaurant. I got those kind of gigs. So I never, and I didn't even call myself a stride pianist. I called myself a jazz pianist. I wanted to be taken seriously. And it's funny to see where the women are going now in terms of presenting themselves, because for me, it was all about being taken seriously. And different people the men that I said that were protective of me, they would call ahead. Like Benny Carter would say, you're going to meet Judy Carmichael. You're not going to think she's serious, but she is. So give her a chance, kind of thing. And that happened a lot. This was pre-email. That meant they had to pick up a phone and call people. But these men did that for me. And something that I think's important too, that you and I both enjoyed, is that if you played great, that's all that counted. Everything else fell away, and then everybody was on your team. And so what I did is I went, I recorded my first album, and it was Marshall Royal, Red Callender, Harold Jones, Freddie Green. So everybody was much older, famous, and Black, except for me. And I sent it to John Hammond. He loved it, and inferred that I was an older Black woman that somehow he had missed. And so I went back to New York. I borrowed the money for the ticket, all of that. And still thinking I wanted to go to New York, but I still lived in LA. And had a meeting with him, and he got very awkward, didn't know what to do with me. He said, well, I've asked some people about you. Nobody's heard of you. Who have you played with? And I said, well, I hired people to play with me. And I wasn't being obnoxious, but I was always leader. And he didn't know how to relate with that. And maybe your listeners don't. Back then, it was a very predictable route that a jazz musician took. You had to be a sideman. Hopefully you had enough identity that someday, maybe in your 40s, you could do your own thing. But it was a different, and I was already doing my own thing. Nobody really knew what to do with me. And I was already entertaining and all that. So anyway, basically threw me out. And I went back to the hotel, cried. I'd spent all this money. I felt terrible. And I thought, well, nobody knows who I am. I'm going to go out and people are going to know who I am. And I called Freddie Green and told him what happened. And he said, well, he thought you were Black. He's always had a problem with this. And, Freddie sort of mopped me up. So I stopped crying and all of that. And then I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to meet everybody I can. I had a couple days. So I went to Eddie Condon's. And I may have this reversed. I think Roy Eldridge had a steady gig at Jimmy Ryan's, and he was taking a break at Eddie Condon's. And so I went up to him at the bar, and I said, and I still remember I was wearing this spaghetti strapped red dress with hibiscus all over it, like with flowers. And I mean, I could not have looked more like I just came off the beach, blonde hair.
Sure.
And I went up to Roy and I said, Mr. Eldridge, I'm a huge fan. And I remember he turned around very crabby, just like Dave McKenna, and gave me the once over. He said, well, what do you do? Because I'm this girl that came up to him. And I said, I play stride piano. And he said, prove it. He said, this chick thinks she plays stride piano. And he yelled at the band, told them to get off the stage. He said, play Handful of Keys. And he never figured I'd do it. And it was a real Hollywood moment. I mean, it was like, this is the moment that my career changed. And I went up. God knows how I had that much nerve. But I went up, I played it, and the place went absolutely insane. They stood up, they screamed, they applauded. I mean, it was really a thing. And everybody's going, more, more, more. And Roy grabs me and practically yanks me off the stage and said, leave her alone. She proved her point. He like sits me down on the, he says, now tell me, why are you here? Now tell me who you are. And so I did. I told him what happened with John Hammond. Roy says he thought you were Black. I mean, it was really, it was just like same thing. And he goes, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go uptown. And there's a guy named Dick Wellstood. I want you to go to a place called Hanratty's. I want you to go uptown. I want you to play Handful of Keys for him. Then I want you to go downtown to a guy named Tommy Flanagan at a place called
Yeah.
Bradley's. And I
Yeah.
want you to play Handful of Keys.
Yeah.
And he was so smart. He wanted the same situation. He wanted people to have the same
reaction, right?
moment of
Yeah.
of this skinny blonde girl getting up and doing it. And it was
Right.
so hip and so smart. And he didn't want to take a chance on me not making the right move because I was young. I might have gone in and played a ballad. You know, it would have been nothing. So
Sure.
I went up. There was nobody there. That Wellstood was having a very quiet night. I think there was one couple in the room when I went, and it was the owner and Wellstood sitting there having a drink. And I said, Roy Eldridge sent me. And he goes, oh, are you one of his students? I said, no, he wanted me to, I'm from California. He wanted me to play a tune. So I did. And I played Handful of Keys. And they immediately offered me a job. You know, the owner of the place did. And I was too nervous. I said, well, maybe at another time. And then I went down to Bradley's. And as soon as I heard Tommy Flanagan, I turned around to walk out. That was it. I thought, I am so out of my league. I'm just getting out of here. And so I turned around and I started to leave. And Tommy got up from the piano and ran after me. And he goes,
really?
I know who you are. He said, the word on the street is so big.
Oh my
He
God.
said, I not only know who you are, I know the tune you're going to play. Think of how generous he said. Yeah, no, it was huge. It was huge.
Wow.
And so because he saw I was leaving, you know, he wouldn't let me leave. And so he said, sit down. And he said, I'm going to take a break. Don't leave. And you know this. They didn't let anybody sit in at Bradley's unless you were Bill Evans.
No.
You know, you didn't sit in on that gig. And so he played, I don't know, he played some, I wouldn't kill myself, something like The Lush Life. I thought this is like the worst moment of my life. But then Tommy, incredibly, and it shows because Roy had called him, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
He knew what I was going to play. He was the kind of person he is. They could see I was Goldilocks, just waiting for a wolf to gobble me down. He played like an oral sorbet. He played this little ditty after he finished this ballad, and which sort of then cleared your ears and set me up so that Handful of Keys wouldn't seem silly or dated after Lush. Right. It was unbelievable. And he did that. And then he said, we have a special moment for all of you. He said, Roy Eldridge has sent a friend of his. So everybody had to, I could not have been set up in a bigger way.
Right.
And so somehow I survived and did it. And so in 2 days, everybody knew who I was. It was a thing of unreal. It was. And they all took me seriously.
Let me just say this. Let me say this in hindsight. That doesn't happen for everyone.
No, thank you. You're right. No,
but I mean, you had the chops, but you had the playing and you had the talent and the chops to back it up. But I mean, obviously, I'm joking. We both know that it never happens for anyone that way. It's just an amazing thing. It's
when you have to have the guts to do it. That's the thing. I mean, it was what I pictured with New York. Someone told me you love New York because New York loved you. But I also had the guts. I mean, I've explained this to people. I said, it's like a surfer saying, you think you surf? There's a 30-foot wave. Because it was a 30-foot wave. For me to sit in on Tommy Flanagan's gig?
I know.
Or is it? I mean, no, it's just like, it's mind-blowing. And so, so the fact that I did have the courage, and I've talked to people, I talked to Duke Robillard, and he's great. And he said that he was asked to sit in on a couple things, and he was just too chicken. He couldn't do it.
Right.
He thought, I can't do it. And Duke's great. But you have to have the follow-up with it. And
you have to, I mean, just to jump in for a second, it's one of the things that I've said, when I tell people about what I've done and stuff, I never say no to anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, you can't say no.
you never know what will happen. I mean,
Right.
if Penn said, "We want you to play in our show," and I said, "Well, I don't why would I play in a magic show? I'm a jazz piano player."
Right.
I wouldn't have had this great career.
Right.
Um, and Penn will say, the Mike Jones biography, "A Life Perfectly Lived." And,
Yeah.
he's just he's being a dickhead. But
Right.
of course not. But, but that's the point is you've got to be willing to take the chance if it's offered and not, of course you have doubts and you worry, you say, am I up to this or whatever, but you just do it. As Penn said, when I said, you're going to play bass in front of 1,400 people a night, you've been playing bass for less than a year. And he said, I'm not going to get any better if I don't play.
Yeah, and it's really, I tell people that, they'll say, well, how do you do it? Aren't you ever nervous? And I said, the difference between those who really succeed in these things, we're all nervous and scared. We just do it anyway. And
Right,
that's the
exactly.
point. We know that
Yeah.
somewhere in there, that's why, like, circling back, I'm talking about the thing in Switzerland. I thought, you survived and everybody loved it, and you made more mistakes in that one 75-minute show than you've done in your whole career. And I'm not making this up. We know
Right.
how we play. And I mean,
Right.
they weren't terrible mistakes, but I'm used to
Right.
I like to be pristine. I play like you do. I want it to
Sure.
sound good, but I went for more stuff. I thought that, God, I'm getting sick of my playing. I've got to have some new ideas here. I'll take an extra chorus. I'll try whatever. But the big transition, I was giving you the long road to it. What happened is
Right.
that I then wound up, I was
No, this is good.
smart, but I was smart about it. I kept the Disneyland gig, saved up a lot of money, and then I would come
Mhm.
to New York. And to kind of explain to our listeners, it was a further leap to come from Los Angeles to New York than it was to go from New York to Europe. I mean, it was just radically different because
Right.
there weren't the cultural things. It was just very different when I grew up in Los Angeles. And plus I was working at Disneyland. I
Mhm.
mean, talk about a huge leap of doing this. I wasn't used to, I didn't
Right.
never played a concert. I was used to sitting in a costume with Mickey dancing. And now I'm suddenly
Right.
the center of attention. That took incredible nerve. But I could go back, and the advantage is nobody heard me grow up. Nobody saw any of the, I came back, did a thing, and then I left. And also
Right.
because it's such a huge, people were very patronizing about Los Angeles then. And some New
Mhm.
Yorkers still are. But
Sure.
back then they really were. But somehow it wound up working in my favor because people thought I seemed like a New Yorker. They thought I looked like a California girl, but I was so
Uh-huh.
speedy and direct. I really related with the New York personality. So it was almost like they said, wow, she turned out cool in spite of being from LA. I mean, it was hilarious. It was really, people felt that way. So they
Yeah.
were never sort of holding it against me. And so the shorter version now is that I um, debuted in New York, got a beautiful write up. Started on Tuesday. Wednesday, there was a really positive review. And then Friday, they gave me a half-page feature in the Times, which they don't do
Jesus.
unless
And
it's
this
an
was
obit. Yeah, it
yeah.
was
This was
1982.
this was Hanratty's?
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was such a big deal because, I mean, the closest person in age to me was 35 years, 40 years older than I, something like
Right.
that. I mean, they were a huge age difference, and only two of them are alive, and it's Dick Hyman and John Eaton. Everybody
Right.
else of that stable is gone. And
Right.
it was a really classy stable of guys who
Yes.
were playing there,
Oh,
It
sure. I
was the
mean,
top. Well, was Dave,
there w yeah, and what's his name? John Bunch?
John Bunch,
And
and it was,
alright.
and I think Tommy played there some. I think Hank
Yeah.
played there before. It was Hank Jones. It was
Yeah.
Dave McKenna, of course. Sammy Price.
Oh, yeah, Sammy.
Um, trying to think, maybe Derek Smith. I'm not sure.
Oh, I love
Um,
Derek.
yeah, but I mean, they were
Uh,
all magnificent, and Ralph
yeah,
Sutton, of
yeah,
course. But the point is
yeah.
that I got this half page feature, and it said where three women, New York City, where three women are singing. And I remember one of them was Beverly Sills, so it shows you the level what three, and they were all
Huh,
opera people, and one is
yeah.
playing piano. And so the
Wow.
whole bottom, it was the cover of the art section,
Oh
and
my god.
It was an overnight. I mean, it would be the equivalent of
Yeah,
going viral because then everybody came,
yeah, of
and then everybody George Weah called. That was really
course.
that's how I got to do it was I was the
Oh,
thing.
okay, yeah.
And so that was the big switch.
Yeah, it turns out that being in the New York Times, that'll help. Um,
Yeah, well, it did
but,
back then because
yeah,
that's back when people read. So they actually would
yeah,
pick up
yeah,
a paper and
right, yeah,
funny aside is that it's funny, I haven't thought about this in years, but I just told this story because the club I worked in Switzerland last week, on the wall, right in my eye line, was a great picture of Benny Carter, and there was a spotlight on it. They had all the pictures on the wall of all the jazz people. But so I
mhm.
was looking at Benny every night, and
Oh,
the first article on me, that was on the Wednesday, which was like the taster. Can you imagine getting 2
right.
reviews in 1 week?
Jesus Christ, no.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unbelievable. And it said, the first line said, when saxophonist Benny Carter first heard Judy Carmichael, blah, 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 blah. And
Right,
they were always doing it back then because those names had meaning to everybody.
sure,
It especially had meaning in Take the Skinny White Girl seriously, Benny
right,
Carter, Count Basie, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
But it said, but the funny thing was, is it was a great scene like out of a movie. And I bring this up because our friend, wonderful magician Todd Robbins, was with me.
oh,
And Todd
right,
would come to pick me up every night and walk me home, and which was so sweet because he lived midtown and I lived around the block. But he still came,
mhm,
because it was so late when I was off. Anyway, so Todd, we knew the paper was coming out. My first review ever, not just New York Times, my first review.
right. Jesus,
So I think the
starting at the top.
paper, exactly. I'd have to find out. But back then, it seemed like it was the middle of the night because I remember we had to go to a cafe to stay up to
Uh-huh,
wait for that because it's the morning edition. So it seems like it was 2 or
sure.
3 o'clock or something. Anyway, it was misting a little bit. It was very cinematic. We'd stayed up and Todd would go and they, just like in the movies, they plop down the stack of papers and
Mhm,
Todd grabs it and he opens it up and we look at it and at the same, in unison, we read the title and the title
uh-huh.
says Judy Carmichael, saxophonist.
Ha,
And
ha, ha.
I go, could there be another Judy Carmichael? What? This is horrible. Is there like, and what it
Yeah.
was is the title writer just read the first sentence. When
Oh my
saxophonist Benny
god.
Carter first heard
Right,
Judy Carmichael. So they didn't read
right.
the article. They assumed I was a saxophonist. So
Mm.
my first review had me as a saxophonist, but by the afternoon
Wow.
edition, it was corrected.
Oh,
So
good.
that was taken care of.
Yes.
But that was it. And that was
Expect a formal apology from the Times.
yeah. Well, I
But,
feel a bit like the movie Barbie when Barbie comes out, when the beautiful version, or I don't want to say that, get in trouble, but whatever they called her, the stereotypic Barbie, when
uh-huh.
she says, and then women got their rights, and then everything was better for women for the rest of the time. I feel like I'm now saying it. I got that article, and it's been
Yeah.
easy ever since then.
Sure, sure, never a
Not.
moment's trouble.
I
Yeah, yeah,
became
no
rich and
kidding.
famous
Yeah. I
overnight.
know, yeah, I mean, the level of naivete when I was a kid thinking, "Oh my god, he's got a record out, he must be rich and famous." You
Yeah,
know? I just
yeah.
thought that everybody that hits you harshly. But
It does.
it's, but and I mean, just on a personal, side, so you knew Todd from California, or how did you meet him in New York?
Oh,
And
I'll tell you,
how did that
Todd's
all
a
work?
great story because Todd's mother brought him to hear me. So for those who might not know Todd Robbins, he's a very accomplished magician and has done television shows and did a
Right.
show with Teller directing it,
Yep.
I think, as well. So
Yeah.
anyway, Todd's mother, he's a few years younger than I, and they brought him in. She brought him in, and he was already 6 feet tall. So he looked much older
Uh-huh.
than he was, and brought him in. And he started to hear me on like the second gig I had. And he immediately
Okay.
started pontificating about, well, do you know that Zez Comfrey did blah, 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 19 blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, God, spare me from these obnoxious teenagers who think they know everything, right? And so that he'd come back, because he didn't even drive yet. You know, I was
Uh-huh.
19 and he was 16 or something.
Right.
And so then she brought him again. And he was brought up, you know, like fancy Long Beach mom wear gloves kind of thing, you know. So he's very
Oh, I didn't
blunt.
know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So old money kind of Long Beach. And so she was very,
Right.
you know, that's germane to our story where I'm going with this, because
Mhm.
you'll be able to tell Penn that they're going to love it. And anyway, so, but he kept coming back. And bit by bit, I realized that he actually was correct on all this stuff he knew. You know,
Uh-huh.
he actually did know all these things. So then periodically I started using him as a resource. I'd say, hey, I want to work on
Mhm.
this tune. Do you know when UV Blake, can you get me your hands on blah, blah, blah? So then Todd
Right.
became a person who started giving me music and all of that.
Ah.
And because
Yep, yep.
he loves all that. So
Mhm.
then he came, I think when he was a, you know, Annette Bening's acting partner. You know, he went to the acting
Right.
school in San Francisco, and one of the people he went to school with. So he was there at at the Concord Jazz Festival. And in a
Ah.
horribly embarrassing moment for him, but it's funny enough to tell here. So you
Sure.
figure that Todd is now, we're a few years older. We've now become
Mhm.
friends. He's this huge supporter of mine, and now he's sort of my archivist. But
Right.
he's up in acting school, and there he is with his mother. His mother had been visiting him. They come to the Concord Jazz Festival, and I've triumphed, and everybody's running around. I've done my thing, and I'm doing my first NPR interview. And it was, I can't remember the name of the show, Jazz Alive, I think. It was Tim Owens, but it was
Okay.
a big, big deal, my
Yeah,
first
yeah.
interview. And there he is, and I'm standing there with, and I should say here, this is when a lot of women thought they had to dress like a guy to be taken seriously. So
Okay.
it was Ann Patterson's band. She had an all-girl band, but they were wearing like polo shirts and jeans. Some of them didn't have shoes on, you know, like we don't care. We're
Mhm.
not vain. Emily Remler
Sure.
she sort of went for the hippie look, like the 70s. That's how she
Right.
looked. And a friend of mine was friends with Stevie Nicks' designer and said, hey, I can get her to make something for you. So I have this killing white jumpsuit and heels. I look, you know, like really a little
Yeah.
Barbarella-ish without the skin. So it was like a really
Right.
cool, white, very feminine outfit.
Mhm.
And that's important for this. I'm in the middle of my interview, and up comes Todd with his mom, and they're standing there, and she grabs the microphone while I'm on a live interview, and she said, isn't it wonderful to see a young lady who knows how to dress? Not like those other girls. They look terrible. And so, Todd is suicidal. It couldn't be more embarrassing. And, you know, the guy who's interviewing me says, well, Judy does look good, you know, and it's like, I'm just,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Oh, that's great.
No, it is so of the time. It's so
Yeah.
fantastic. I just love this kind of thing. I mean, this is actually in the 80s, but Emily still had sort of that throwback look.
Oh,
And
yeah, I remember. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Love it.
So then Todd moved to New York before I did. And so he was really the one
Okay.
that was showing me around New York. I mean, he's been a great, great friend, great supporter through the whole thing. And then, of course, he was the first thing that reached out to Penn. And then you
Right.
and Todd gave the 1-2 punch, which is why Penn said yes. Todd said, here's Judy.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
said,
Well,
he's
I mean,
cool.
well, Penn, again, they will say yes to anything that interests them. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure that they turn down 1,000 things a month, you know, but
Yeah.
he knew that it was something to be asked to be on your show. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
mm, mm.
It was a legitimate thing. You know, it wasn't a drive time radio in Phoenix, you
That's
know.
what, Leonard Maltin said I had a podcast before podcast existed. And I said, hey, I hadn't really thought of it, you know,
Yeah,
in its funny
that's kind of
way.
true.
But
But
but you guys got me through the firewall is my point. I would have never gotten to
yeah,
Penn
yeah.
had it not been
No,
that.
that's and it's so weird. I mean, so many things in this business are personal connections. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I would have never gotten the gig at the Green Mill if Neil Tesser hadn't called up Dave Gemolo and said, you should hire this guy. He's great.
Yeah.
I've known Dave for 25 years. I said, if I had just sent you a CD, is there any chance you would have even listened to it? And he said, oh, Jones, it'll be in a pile on my desk.
Absolutely. And
You know?
I understand it now because of everybody pitching me for this.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact,
Oh,
I wish
sure.
that I should actually send you something. Although not that you have more time than I do, but I don't have time to listen to these things. And plus when I
Right.
don't know how your ears are, and this is something interesting for our listeners too. My ears just wear out. At the end of the day, I
Uh-huh.
want to put on some Jobim. I want to
Right.
put on something that just clears my head, usually that has nothing to do with what I do. I want something that doesn't make me think,
Right.
oh man, I should practice that. Or, I want it to like, that's why I
Yeah.
say Sinatra and Jobim is a real go-to for me to just
Yeah.
bring me home.
It's yep.
And
It's so
so,
funny you mentioned that because I literally 2 nights ago, I was watching the Sinatra with Ella and Joe Beam TV
oh,
special,
well, there you go.
which,
There you go.
I
No,
mean,
it's like it, but we need that because you can't keep listening to this stuff. And then I try, and not to mention a lot of the stuff you get, a lot of the stuff I'm getting are singers with money who
uh-huh.
had a different career and they're women of a certain age
Hmm.
and they sing okay, but then
Right.
they hire all our friends that are great.
Right.
So I can listen to that and I'm glad people are working, but I can't have them on the show.
No, no, no.
That's
And
not what the show's about.
right, exactly. And it's so weird that I mean that became sort of in the past 10 years. I don't know, maybe longer, but certainly there was a woman quote unquote jazz singer who sort of bought herself a career, whose mother was a very influential person in, let's say, magazines or something. And her first record was not good. And she just made herself a career. It's not, I mean, I don't know. It's with the preponderance of the internet and everybody having a voice, there's certainly wonderful things about the fact that anybody can put whatever they want on YouTube or whatever they want, but the gatekeeping is gone. You know what I mean? There
Absolutely.
were A&R
Absolutely.
guys. You said the model was, as I said, you got good at your instrument, and then maybe you got a record deal, and then maybe you went on tour, and that was all sort of on your merits as a
Right. Right.
performer and
Right.
as a musician. And then
Yeah.
suddenly all of that's gone. There's no more record labels. There's no more telling people. I mean, I'm not saying that someone should tell you what's good or not, but there is value in having that curated for the
Oh,
American public.
absolutely. Do you
You
probably
know?
know Andy? Do you know Andy Brown, the great guitar player in Chicago?
Oh, I know. I've met
Because
him.
he
Yeah,
does a
but
great, yeah. He's one of
yeah,
my main guys. And
yeah,
Andy, I loved it because one time we were having this discussion. He said, "Jazz is supposed to be hard. It calls the herd." And I
right.
loved that because
Yeah,
it was really, it was saying that. And I agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's great that people have access, but I get people all the time. It's funny that they send me, we sound so cranky, but I'll have people send me something of some kid that
uh-huh,
is supposed to be cute and talented. And every great musician I know was talented when they were young. They just were.
right,
Music and math show early. So
right.
when people will send me, they'll go, they're amazing and they're only 20. I'll say, I want to see where they are when they're 40. Do they
Right.
have
Well,
everything else to keep it going? Do they have a story to tell?
it's
All of that
it's the
is
same.
going to,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
it's,
I'm jumping on the miserable train.
no, no, but no, what I was going to say is I think that it's like what I send them and it'll make you laugh is that they will send me these things and they'll say, "Isn't this cute?" And there's a video of early Ray Charles, which he's already swinging at like 6.
Right.
And it's unbelievable.
Right.
Or my favorite is to send Sammy Davis Jr. in that movie where he's in a courtroom and he's already tap
Oh,
dancing
yeah.
and singing. And
Yeah.
I think he's 7, and he's better than all the
Yeah.
adults in the film. And I will send back and I'll say, this is an amazing child. What you just sent me as somebody whose
Right.
life is
Yeah.
because the internet's going to spoil him and make him think he's talented, and he's not. It's like, stop
Well,
it, people.
I mean, yeah, and again, I'm not going to use a name because I don't want to get in trouble either. But a couple of years ago, this teenage phenomenon piano player hit the scene, and I heard nothing that interested me.
Yeah.
It basically sounded like he would take 2 lines of Bill Evans and then put it together with 2 lines of Tommy Flanagan and 2 lines. And there was nothing, no original thought and nothing interesting. And people that I respected said, "Oh, no, he's the real thing. I think he's going to be." I said, "Talk to me in 10 years when he's 26 and we'll see how real thing he is."
Yeah.
Because I went to school, one of my dear friends, and we reconnected when we did Radio City a couple months ago, and I saw Makoto Ozone for the first time in person in 40 years. We had lunch.
Oh, fabulous.
We were very close at Berkeley. We were good friends. But he was a level of genius and phenomenon that I've still held up as the best example that I've ever seen. There was nothing he couldn't do, and he did it with such ease and developed into, when I met him at Berkeley, he was playing like the next generation of Oscar Peterson. He could play everything Oscar played, but he was playing some more advanced harmonic ideas than Oscar played. And I thought, this is the evolution of Oscar. And then he met Gary Burton and started playing that kind of stuff, which is there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful, but it's not the stuff that we love,
Yeah.
And then he had a classical career, but when he was 11, he was playing Jimmy Smith organ on his own TV show in Japan. You know what I mean? There's what you want to talk about with talented kids.
Exactly.
You're gonna pull out your ruler for that stuff. I got some people you want to meet, but like you said, Sammy, but it's very strange. And again, I'm not. Penn will say, "Get off my lawn." He likes to say I'm this bitter, and I'm not. I love everything. But
I'm loving that we're just free flowing with this, Mike. It's so great because
that's what this is. We're just having a conversation.
But it's things that should be said. It's like we don't want to get all negative, and we both enjoyed wonderful success.
No.
And we've talked about the things we've got to do, but I think people need a little bit of cold water thrown in their face so they can tell the difference, because I contend people do tell the difference. I remember there was a club downtown called it's still there, Knickerbocker, and that was my regular place for a while. And you could stand right behind the piano in the bar, and people could look right down. It was a great spot. I used to hear everybody there, But I had a couple guys, and this was after someone famous, who I also don't want to name, had come out, who was sort of playing in this style, and a couple years younger than I. And I'll never forget it because they were 2 college guys. They go, "Wow, you're just like so-and-so, except you're good." And they could hear the difference. And this other person is more famous than I'll ever be. And that's fine. And they could hear it because and this is something interesting. It brings me something, because there have been times in my life, and I'd be curious what you say, that, we all do it as you get older. You look back and you think, well, why am I here? And if you sit and ponder it, you can think of the decisions you made that brought you here, if you're honest, if you're not a victim. And I can remember specific times throughout my career, from the time when I was 20 something and when I started to get attention, till now. And where I thought, I want this, because in our case, being famous actually results in more people buying tickets to our concerts. So there's a real reason beyond narcissism that it's good to get famous. But I can remember with different things that I thought, no, I don't want to be that person. I saw the person who was a little ahead of me on something in terms of fame.
Mhm.
And I think, nope, I'm going to keep doing, not like I was trying not to be famous, but there were things that they did that I could see I didn't want to do. I wouldn't feel good about myself. And one of my early lessons, and I've told this story before because it was so significant to me, in that I got an article in People magazine, and it was my first
Mhm.
review that was in a magazine, and it was my first record, and there was a big juicy picture and a very nice article, and it was pretty substantial. It wasn't a page, but it was
Right.
a good part, maybe a quarter of a page, and I'd always gotten very thoughtful fan mail because people were
Mhm.
writing you letters back then. And they were always intelligent, and they'd say things like, I love what you do, but I'm having trouble finding your record. Can you tell me how I could
Right.
do it? It
Sure,
was
sure,
always
sure.
something like that, very polite.
Yep.
Suddenly, once I was in People magazine, people were writing to me from prison. And
Right.
instead of I love your work, it was send your panties. And
Right.
it was
Sure.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I was, thank God, smart enough, even as young as I was, to realize, oh, it isn't about the music. It's about a pretty
Mhm.
25-year-old in a magazine. That's who they're writing to.
Right.
They're not, this has nothing to do with my music. And I remember
Right.
when
They're
that
not
Tom
buying. They're they're not moving from Dick Wellstood to Judy Carmichael.
no,
You know what I mean?
no, no. And I
Um,
remember my assistant at the time, I had this young guy, he was so cute. And we would look at it and I'd say, throw that out. We're going to answer that. Throw that out. I was going through the
right.
stacks of fan mail. And he goes, why are you not writing to these people? I said, when you look at the handwriting and it looks like a psychopath, we don't answer. Do you know,
Exactly.
Mike, I couldn't even give piano lessons because people just wanted to be in my apartment. And I didn't never felt
Wow.
fearful, but
Yeah.
it didn't matter whether they were young or old. There was no way to anticipate what it was.
Right.
People would just be, I've been
That's
in Judy
amazing.
Carmichael's apartment. So I started
Right.
giving lessons at Steinway. So I
Right.
could, and then make sure I didn't go home afterwards. So people
Right.
wouldn't follow me. I mean, I had that kind of fame
See.
for a minute, and it was
Yeah.
very, without the budget to have protection. And that's the
Right.
difference. In a lot of ways, I've had the disadvantages of fame without the advantages. Because if you're really famous,
You
you're
get.
famous all the time. You know the people you expected. I'll have people who will recognize my voice from the radio, and I realize in a restaurant they've been eavesdropping. Weird
Right.
things like that. But it's made me know what I want. Is the point? You know.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, as I said, or much earlier in the conversation, I said one of the things that I prided myself on is really never saying no to any opportunity. But having said that, a big part was making the big decision to not play rock and roll and
Right.
to
That's
only play the music that I
huge.
wanted to play.
That's huge.
Because
Yep. And
I
then you
could
could
have
have done
gone with
it.
any number of bands when I was at Berkeley and been a road hog and just played, rock and roll or whatever. And I mean, who knows if we would have had success or not. But even by the time I went to Berkeley, I had already made those decisions that I wasn't going to play in a cover band and I wasn't going to play weddings and I wasn't going to play, you know what I mean? I was going to play the kind of music that I wanted to play. And I knew I wasn't going to get rich doing it.
That's a huge
Yeah.
financial sacrifice. I
Right.
mean, just for
Exactly.
our audience to know.
I mean, I did a lot of studio work, in New York, I did a lot of studio work, and I'm not going to pretend that I suffered for my art. You know what I mean? I played studio work,
But
but
you didn't do those other decisions. Yep.
yeah, I didn't take gigs. I mean, I just said the gigs weren't right for me. I didn't say they
Right.
were beneath me or I had no interest in wanting to play that kind of music. It's like when Penn hired me for Penn and Teller, another great musician said to Penn, who was worked with Penn for years, he said, well, I'll move my family to Vegas to play in your show. And Penn said, you don't understand. We don't want a piano player in the Penn and Teller show. We want Jonesy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So everything that I write for the show is my compositions I'm only playing music that I want to play. And I'm only
Right.
playing tunes with Penn that I want to play.
Right.
And I made that decision, very early on. I didn't want to be, and I'm not saying anything against it. It's just, I made a decision when I was in my late 20s, when I was working with Herb Pomeroy and Dick Johnson and these guys. And Herb had a sort of a level, and maybe this is where I got it from. Herb would play jazz gigs, but he wouldn't play other gigs, and then I would see Dick Johnson at 70 years old in a tuxedo going up to play a wedding. And I would say, I don't want to be 70 years old playing weddings,
Right.
But Dick did, because Dick just wanted to play. He didn't give a shit. If someone was paying him to play, he would play anything, and he loved it. And he would do 3 gigs on a Saturday.
And I think, and this is important, Mike, this is an important point, because years ago, I realized this when I saw one of these people that we won't name. And it was funny because somebody with me said he's working the room like an old vaudevillian. And it was funny. And he was, but he loved it. And for some reason, I could see, because people say, oh, so-and-so sold out. But it's a personality thing, because some people can do that, and maybe they feel bad about themselves, maybe they don't. I had a long conversation with Alan Broadbent about this, that he just could not do the thing in LA with the studio. It made him hate himself. And he has the skills, you have the skills. Part of my decisions were I didn't have those skills because I came to this so late. I was never going to catch up. I was never going to be a reader like the studio guys were. But I made the decision to bet on myself. I thought, if I only know 10 tunes, they're going to be great. Now I'm going to know 20 tunes. Now I'm going to know 30. I'm never going to be a great sideman. But I then thought, you have to have the courage to put yourself out there in that. And not like you, I also thought, I don't want to play a wedding. I don't want to play. But that, we're not even saying those people are bad. I really saw some people can do that and feel good about it. But if you force yourself to do it, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's so strange, because I know great musicians that supplement their income by doing that. They work Martha's Vineyard during the summer, and these are great musicians. But to me, it's never been about the business. It's been about, I want to play this music. This is what I do.
You're right.
And if I can make a living at it, then great for me. But that's not it's never been about the commerce, and it's funny, because being as lucky as I've been for the past 25 years to be around like the highest level of show business, just, adjacent, as I say, I'm A-list adjacent, I'm
going to quote that.
Yeah, if I want to go somewhere and I can't get in, I'll just bring a pen,
And he does stand out. It's good to have a famous person who's 6'7".
If I can't get in, we used to call Penn the human laminate, because the restaurant's sold out and crowded. Oh, well, my Penn really wanted to eat here. Oh, well, we'll get you a table, that kind of, and and Penn will say that they're not, but Penn's full of shit. They are about as big as you can get in entertainment, without being Brad Pitt,
Right.
But it's one of the things is that I've been so lucky, because I haven't had to compromise anything. I'm playing the music that I want in a show that I love and I'm proud of. And, it's such a great joy. You can do it if you sort of stick to your guns. And as I get, how many people on earth can I have a conversation with besides you and Todd Robbins about Pete Wendling? You know what I mean? Or J. Lawrence Cook, or you know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's not, and it's just such a great, and I got to tell you, we could go on and on, but I'm going to let you go now.
Yes, but I want to tell you, I love that we have concluded. Well, you know how much I love you. I'm a fan and I'm a friend, and I adore you. And I'm thinking it's lovely, because we've come full circle to a very positive place, because we got cranky there for a minute, and to talk about the meaning to do exactly what you love. And I was having a whole down on money and everything with Mike Cash, a wonderful saxophonist. And he said, listen, you live where you want. You play exactly what you want. He said, "You do." He says, "I don't know anybody who does exactly what they want all the time." He said, "I've done
Right.
an entire career and I've never played Happy Birthday." I mean, now it's become kind of a thing. Who can say that I have
Right.
never played? And I worked at Disneyland for 5 years and never played a Disney tune.
Wow.
That was like my own little inside joke, even though they're
Yeah, yeah,
great
yeah,
tunes, you know. But I thought
yeah.
we both done what we wanted. And he said, "Listen, everybody worries about money. Oh, there's something coming through the
Sure.
back there. I can see it. We're signing off, Jen.
Oh,
It's the
um,
moment. We're finally
no,
finishing up."
it's
How do
no,
you guys finish the show? How do you do it? Do you want to say
well, I
something?
just want to thank you so much for being a part of this, and we'll, if I can do it, we'll have you back because just scraped the surface. I mean,
Oh
there's
my
so much
gosh, it's
there, and
so
it's been
much
so
fun.
great, and we've nerded out on piano shit, and it's just so much fun, and I really, really, really can't thank you enough, Judy. It's been
Oh, it's
really great.
fantastic. Thank you so much for asking me. I can't wait. You'll have to tell me when this is on and everything, and I'll tell
Oh
everybody
yeah,